I'd like to welcome Elies Campo on stage for a conversation with me. So it's a very remarkable journey that you had. He has been at 3 different messaging apps. You've created one, Fazdov. You've been part of the initial business development team at WhatsApp. And you're now director of business development at Telegram. So I think you've been truly an expert in this industry. But what I found also very remarkable that you have been a lifelong entrepreneur. So you created your first company/radio station with age of 14.
Yep.
So it's a very remarkable entrepreneur story. And we're going to talk a little bit about product versus business. I think that's one of the conversations I hear a lot in the Romanian ecosystem. I mean, as you would see in the audience, probably we have a lot of engineers who are building products and so on. And I think a lot of them ask them the question, okay, when is it time to build a business? When is it time to really start thinking about money? So I'd like to kick off this conversation with getting your impression on when do you prioritize product, when do you prioritize business, what's kind of the first things that you have to do in order to get something off the ground?
So I think once you already have an MVP that works, you have your first users that use it, and you need funding or you need business, I think a great place to start experimenting with is Silicon Valley. And sometimes the thought is, I have to raise a lot of money to go there, or I have to have a lot of business to go there, and that the advice is to go there as early as possible and as cheaply as possible to kind of test the waters and meet the first investors, meet the first other companies that could start integrating with you or selling with you. And relationships take a long time to build. And if you go early on and you shoot a few emails or LinkedIn messages to early investors and say, hey, I'm building this is what I do very good, and this is what I think it can be, usually everybody there in the Valley is open to early meetings, and one of the things that I love from there is the magic that happens after a few conversations. You always finish a conversation with a few introductions that lead you to other opportunities, whether it's investment, hiring, product, or sales. And this is also part of my personal experience. I arrived there with my own company. It failed, but through the conversations and the relationships, I was able to contribute to the WhatsApp team later on.
Yeah, so I think that's very interesting, right? You've been a European-based founder and then moved to the Valley. And I think a lot of people here, they're asking okay, when you build a business and you want to create a meaningful part of your business in Silicon Valley and you have a company here, what was the trigger for you? What was your thought on what's the right moment to go to the Valley, and how do you advise people to do it? Because you've done the journey yourself.
For me, 10 years ago was a bit too late to go there. I should have gone much earlier. And I think in Europe we have great engineers, and we're great at product, and we're in general pretty bad at business. And that's what the Valley is very, very good. And so as soon as we can get exposure to their great engineering, our products can kind of start making the storytelling that will allow the company to eventually grow. So I think it's try to go as early as possible. You can get there very cheaply with Airbnb or hacker houses that have all their own community and start the relationships there. And for me, I think I should have been gone earlier. Hasn't been bad to go when I went, but definitely an experience I recommend to anybody that if your business is relevant to go there. As early as possible.
Yes. And I heard Elies is hosting a lot of European, especially Spanish entrepreneurs. So I think there you have your own little startup ecosystem that you drew after you.
Yeah, that's something we're trying to contribute from there is encouraging entrepreneurs and companies to visit as early as possible. And we've had a lot of cases where they already raised Series A here and they're a bit too late for the Valley. So it's kind of trying to fit and visit the opportunity that you have there and use it as the resources. We see a lot of conversations all over the world. How can we be Silicon Valley of X, right? While I think we have to understand the Valley as a resources that anybody with a relevant conversation can tap into and use it for the benefit of their company, their products, or their organizations.
That's really cool. I think that's a very good advice that everybody should follow here. And I think really people should push themselves to get out and go into this conversation.
And it doesn't matter if you don't have your pitch perfect. It doesn't matter if you still don't have a lot of traction. If you have a meaningful conversation, a meaningful magic that your product does or whatever, there's people that are willing to and happy to take that conversation. And everybody is extremely connected there. So a few conversations open up and exponentially grow into other meaningful conversations that could lead to potentially things that can help.
Yeah. No, this is really cool. So I'd love to explore a little bit more on like your journey with like WhatsApp. So I think when we discussed earlier, you shared that like WhatsApp really nailed the product, but at least in the early days, they had like no meaningful business at all, right? So I think when you came there, basically it was all white space and like a few people. So can you share a little bit, how do you set up
WhatsApp had a clear business that really worked at the beginning of the alpha. It was a subscription based on iOS. And what happened with WhatsApp was the big constraint initially was money to run the company. And they were able to raise some money, but the initial decisions on technology made the company very lean in infrastructure and cost. So that allowed to focus on product very early on and execute very well on the product. And so it didn't have a need for business or for to sell until later on, and it was self-sustaining with the subscription in some countries and all over the world. And then what made it possible to grow from a business development and growth perspective was we initially set up an email address in the website that was business@whatsapp.com. And initially, nobody really took care of that. But we initially received thousands of emails from all over the world. And from there, we were able to realize, hey, a lot of operators are interested in partnering with us to offer a plan with WhatsApp included and to help them onboard data users. And for us, it's a way to advertise the brand and get more people on board. And that was something that was communicated by the industry itself. We saw constantly all over the world operators kind of wanting to partner in this sense. And for us, it became a way to leverage business development and growth in a way that was very efficient for the company. And we didn't bother the engineering and product team a lot.
So did you have to do any active outreach after you like worked through that emails that was coming through this like business as WhatsApp, or there was so much inbound demand that you really didn't?
The inbound demand was huge, and that was mainly the main driver. Later on, we had to figure out other markets that we were interested because of growth, but because of the huge distribution that we're lucky to get early on, it was mostly based on inbound.
So
one other interesting thing that happened with WhatsApp was that we saw early on developers all over the world trying to hack WhatsApp and implementing services on top of that. That early on for me was very interesting to see because it was eye-opening to see all these services being built on WhatsApp that were solving real problems that people were having. Governments being able to talk to their citizens and exchange feedback, or people implementing all kinds of customer support on WhatsApp. And in this way, it kind of went at the same time the Facebook acquisition. So for liability reasons, it was not able to be pursued at that time. But it's something that in Telegram, we were able to implement and solve a real issue that developers were demanding and were actually implementing, and they were taking it. And this is something that was gold, right? If your community is hacking, going through the effort and the pain of hacking and the risk of being cut out of the service to solve a real problem and a real value that they're generating local, this is huge and valuable feedback that your community is telling you.
I mean, it's the dream of every entrepreneur. If your product becomes a platform that people build stuff on top of it, I mean, I think that's the dream of like every entrepreneur, right?
Yep.
So I think once you've reached that level, then you're already extremely successful. But it like speaks to the power of the product. So would you say it's a fair statement to like tell young entrepreneurs to first like nail the product and focus on making money later?
I think it depends on what kind of product you're building, but if it's a consumer product, you have to find exactly what are your consumers, what are your users liking and why they're using it, and then use those to scale and to a sizable audience that are engaged and fans of your product. And in a way, business or growth will come after that. The initial nailing of the experience is crucial in this sense, and it doesn't have to be perfect or full of features. In the case of WhatsApp, it only worked initially in iOS, and it didn't have groups, it didn't have multimedia, it only sent messages. And at the same time, iOS 3 came with push notifications, and that was the leverage to actually turn it into messaging applications. And at that time, there were multiple competitors doing it. And what happened with multiple features, and what happened that helped WhatsApp grew to what it was the simplicity of the application and the speed. And those were the core features that made WhatsApp what it is. Other companies were working back then in groups, multimedia, vibrating, other type of features, while what consumers really wanted was speed and the expectations fulfilled that the messages that I'm sending are actually being sent and speed, right? You could see that the check mark and that was your message was delivered, while maybe the message was being delivered in the background. But you already immediately got the sense that, wow, this is fast, right? And at Telegram, we're kind of doing the same thing. We're kind of dedicating a lot of efforts for the experience to be incredibly fast and incredibly well. And later on, WhatsApp also understood that there was a huge demand from BlackBerry users to be able to communicate with the growing iOS customers. So the next iteration was to be available on the BlackBerry and be able to fulfill the BlackBerry messaging community into also talking to iOS and Android. And then features like groups or multimedia actually came much later than that.
So when you look into product development, a lot of that was very centric on consumer products. What are your thoughts on prioritizing that for like B2B products, if you have? Like for B2B products, like it's typically, like for consumer products, when you have like the product market fit, you need to really hit this kind of hockey stick growth, which often with like B2B products, you don't like have the same kind of like hockey stick growth, and you still can do fine. So what's your thought?
I don't have a lot of experience on that, but I think my intuition is that B2B products in general have more tolerance to faulty experience and faulty interfaces, as long as the value that you're communicating or that you're giving to your customers is enough. I think there's more tolerance to not have a perfect product, but yes, deliver the value that you're advertising.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective, and I think like given all the shitty B2B products that are out there, this seems to be true. But like a lot of companies who are building like business tools, they're getting way better. So hopefully this is going to change as well. So going back on the business side, what was the business deal, if you can share, that you're most proud of to close? That you said like this was like really like amazing to like close this. I mean, because now it sounded also easy. You just say you open up an email address and the people start sending money your way. So what was the?
It was actually not money. It was partnerships that drew growth based on advertising. So it was no money exchange, and it was marketing plans for operators where they spent marketing dollars to promote WhatsApp and their data plans, and we benefited from that. So big partnerships were with the operators.
So what was the number one deal that like you can share with like people, if you can, where you said like there you did really like the impossible possible and like closed a cool deal, and what like can founders learn from that?
They were not huge deals. There were multiple deals. I think what benefit from what we did very well was streamline the contracts and what we could and the checklist that the operators had to go through, because working with an operator is very slow and hard. So what we really benefited was from creating a very streamlined checklist and simple documents that operators were able to go through and evaluate very fast if they could close or not. And I think it's not about how huge the amount of deals were, the deal was, but at the amount of multiple deals that the team was able to pull off in multiple countries and all at once with a very small team that we were 3 initially.
Okay, yeah, very, very impressive. It makes it all sound so easy, but I'm sure it was not.
It's not difficult, but it's a matter of finding where the friction is, trying to reduce it as much as possible.
Okay, so you're also now an angel investor, invested in quite a large portfolio of startups. So what, like, in terms of like product and business, what are the kind of like the top things that you're looking for in a startup when you make your like investment decisions?
We're pretty open as what we're investing in. We're also early angels. We just started investing 3 years ago. So we're very early on this also. But we look at the teams. We look at teams that are able to execute technology and product, and teams that show that are able to create products that show some kind of early traction in some way, or some kind of technology that is new and surprises us in a way that we haven't seen until then. And also the way that the team is able to execute in terms of overcoming challenges or frictions, and how they're able to get their first deal signed, or how they're able to get their partnerships initially, or how they're able to get to a certain amount of usage.
Okay. No, so you're clearly like very much like product first, right? Like product technology first, and then the rest comes. So I think that's like a good advice for founders in the audience. What would your advice be like for I mean, like when we shared earlier, like Steffi was sharing that there's like a person in here who hopefully can create like $1 billion company. What would be your advice be for like founders in this ecosystem? I mean, in the European ecosystem, what would be like your top advice for them in order to make it big?
I think in general in Europe we take too long to launch. We always try to have this engineering mentality that this has to be perfect, or this has to be working in a perfect way, and we take too long to launch. And we also take too long to go find it or meet investors. And I think as if you have something that you can show in terms of development, is as soon as possible, show it to as many people as you can. Find who other investors are over the world, have invested in similar companies or in the industry that you have invested, and shoot them an email, very simple. No need to write a whole Bible about where you are, where you come from just a line of, hey, I have this, it works very well, it does that, X and Y, and I want to meet you because of this, that, and that. And I would recommend anybody to do that as fast as possible once you have something that you can, a demo that you can show. And don't worry about if it doesn't work fully properly, if it doesn't look as nice as you wished. And it will help you get to the narrative that you will need in order to sell your product later on, and to also see what your narrative have to be also to get the funding that you need to make your vision a reality.
So one thing that's now also for early stage founders is like changing a lot is like kind of what kind of abilities to fund your business available, right? Like, I mean, the traditional way to fund your business so far is either to go like through some like different rounds of like external financing, and then of course like revenue, which is like typically either like premium service or advertising financed. So it looks like now with all the blockchain and crypto space, there's new ways for people and for startups to like get money into their like product by both like using it as a token on their product and like basically making money from that. So like allowing like a new way for business. So what's kind of your thought? Do you think this is like going to like fundamentally change the way on how like startups are going to like in the future build their business in the like going out? Or you think this is like more like just a different way to do the same thing?
I don't know how the impact will be, but definitely it's going to have some impact, and it opens a new way of funding that was not available before. And it also depends on what the product that you're building, right? To summarize very simply, it's what blockchains basically do is disrupt the need for trust, right? So if your product that you're building needs a decentralized trust, then maybe that could be a potential way, but not everything has to be based on blockchain. We've been working with databases for a lot of years, and they're very good, right? So if your product makes sense to do that, I think it's a great opportunity to build and kind of have your customers prepay for the product that you're building, and eventually get also initially the distribution that you will need in order for that company or that product to be a success. I think ICOs and tokens are great for this. Your community is actually prepaying for the product that you advertise that you're going to be able to build. And the other one is all this community is very happy for you to deliver their product, and then potentially they'll be also users of your service. And this is kind of the theory. We'll see how it will play over the next few years. But it definitely opens an exciting way, an alternative to fund your company.
So one final question. If an entrepreneur in the audience would want to attract your funding, what would they need to do to like wow you and get your funding at the end?
Have an impressive product and an impressive story that you're building, and send us an email and or a telegram, and get impressed by the product that you're building. And it doesn't matter how beautiful it is, it doesn't matter how complete it is, it's how clear the problem that you're solving is, and how your first users are happy about it.
Great. I hope a lot of people take you up on that and you get a lot of emails after this talk. Okay. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure.